Mr. Toad. On a bright sunny morning early in the summer, Mole and Rat had been busy with the boat. They had been painting and varnishing and mending the paddles, and they were just finishing their breakfast in the parlour when there was a heavy knock on the door. "Bother," said Rat, all over egg. "See who it is, Mole, will you?" It was Mr. Badger. He strode heavily into the room, looking very, very serious. "Toad's hour has come," he said solemnly. "This very morning another new and very powerful motor car will arrive at Toad Hall. You two must come with me at once and stop him doing any further harm." "Right you are," cried Rat, starting up. "We'll rescue Toad. We'll convert him." The three of them set off up the road, and when they reached the carriage drive of Toad Hall, they found a shiny, new, bright red motor car standing in front of the house. And just as they arrived, Toad came out dressed in goggles, cap, and enormous overcoat. "Hello, you fellows," he began cheerfully. "You're just in time to come for a jolly." But Rat and Mole grabbed him. Mr. Badger strode up the steps to the front door. "Take him inside," he said sternly to his companions. Then he turned to the chauffeur in charge of the new car. "I'm afraid you won't be wanted today," he said. "Mr. Toad has changed his mind." And he followed the others inside. "Now then," said Mr. Badger to Mole and Rat, "take those silly driving clothes off him." Toad was kicking and struggling, so Rat sat on him while Mole got the motoring clothes off him bit by bit. "You've taken no notice of our warning," said Mr. Badger severely. "You're getting us all a bad name by your furious driving." "I'll make one more effort to bring you to reason," went on Mr. Badger. "You come with me into the smoking room." 3/4 of an hour later, Mr. Badger reappeared with a limp and tearful Toad. "He's very sorry, and he's going to give up motor cars forever," announced Mr. Badger. Mr. Badger asked Toad to repeat in front of his friends what he had just said in the smoking room. They all looked at him. "No," he said, "I'm not sorry. In fact, the first motor car I see, poop poop, off I go in it." "What?" cried Mr. Badger. "You backsliding animal, you. Take him upstairs, you two, and lock him in his bedroom." "It's going to be a long business," said Mr. Badger, sighing. "I've never seen Toad so determined." And true enough, while he was locked in his room, Toad would arrange the bedroom chairs to look like a motor car. Then he would pretend that he was in the driving seat and drive along, poop poop, until he had an accident. One day, when Mole and Mr. Badger had gone out for a ramble in the woods, Rat went upstairs to see Toad and found him still in bed. "Ratty," he murmured feebly. "Would you go to the village quickly and fetch a doctor? Even now it may be too late." Rat hurried from the room, being very careful, however, to lock the door behind him. "It's best to be on the safe side," he said to himself. "I'd better humour him and go," he thought. "If there's nothing really the matter, the doctor will tell him he's an old ass." So he ran off to the village on his errand of mercy. Little did he know that Toad had hopped out of bed as soon as he heard the key turn in the lock. Toad got dressed quickly in his best suit and filled his pockets with money. Then he took the sheets off his bed. He tied them together and fastened one end to the centre mullion of his window. He scrambled out of the window, held onto the sheets very tightly, and slid gently to the ground below. Taking the opposite direction to Rat, Toad scampered off happily, whistling a merry tune. Poor Rat felt a terrible fool when Mr. Badger and Mole came back and he had to tell them that Toad had escaped. "You've been a bit of a duffer this time, Ratty," said Mole. "Toad, too, of all animals." "He did it awfully well," said Rat. Meanwhile, Toad, gay and irresponsible, walked briskly along. "Smart piece of work that," he said to himself, chuckling, and when he reached the little town, he went into the hotel and ordered a slap-up lunch for himself to celebrate his escape. He was halfway through his meal when he heard a poop-poop and a motor car stopped outside. The occupants came inside, and Toad could contain himself no longer. Out into the yard he went to have a look. "I wonder if this sort of car starts easily," he murmured. Of course, Toad just could not resist the temptation. He got in, started the engine and drove out of the yard. He drove out of the town and sped through the open country beyond. He felt that he was Toad once more. Toad at his best. Toad the terror, the traffic queller. The miles were eaten up, and under him as he went, he knew not whither, living his hour, reckless of what might come to him. "Let me see," said the magistrate. "He is guilty of stealing a motor car, of driving dangerously, and of cheeking the police. What's the stiffest penalty we can give him?" 20 years, said the clerk. "Excellent," said the magistrate. So a poor Toad was taken off to prison, loaded with chains. They had to drag him from the courthouse, shrieking and protesting, past the crowds in the marketplace and across the drawbridge of the grim old castle. They took the unhappy Toad past sentries and guardrooms full of grinning soldiers. They led him right to the door of the grimmest dungeon that lay in the heart of the innermost keep in the castle. The rusty key creaked in the lock, the great door clanged behind him, and Toad was a helpless prisoner.